Hi, everyone. That's such an exciting topic this week. And I thought it was Megan and Aaliyah who wanted this topic, and I don't see either one of them on right now. So this week we're talking about onboarding and offboarding systems, processes, best practices. Do we want to get started?
Let's jump in. Let's roll, and then hopefully Megan and them they'll come on here in a second, and they can share.
Yep, I'll keep my eyes out.
Awesome. So where do we want to get started? What is the an outcome you would like to have from this call? And feel free to jump in.
Does somebody have a good checklist that for onboarding and offboarding when that time comes? Maybe.
I like it. Checklist. Okay. Process.
Or just to see what everybody else is doing and how we could do ours better.
Love it.
Does
So
anybody-
who has one?
Who has a good checklist? We're not looking for the perfect checklist, just a good checklist.
Like a checklist for what we need to do to onboard them, or they're like not their 30, 60, 90, right? Or
Right. I think they are two separate things.
yeah.
Which I think just onboarding and offboarding processes and procedures probably is enough for one call. If we want to have a 30, 60, 90 call at some point, we can absolutely do that. I would say let's stick with the actual onboarding, like what we do to onboard a person or what we do to offboard a person.
I have a pretty weak checklist, but I'd
That's a good way
definitely
to
add to it, but I could share it.
Why don't you share it, Jess? And then we can, maybe that's our mastermind. We all work together to build the perfect checklist.
Okay.
I have one also. I'll put in the chat.
Shannon's probably way better than mine. She's official HR queen.
Oh, well, I didn't design this, so I don't even use this. My people use it. So let's just put it that way.
Okay. Oh, wait. I thought I had it up. Oh, yeah. All right, that's it. It's kind of embarrassing, but it's just so I don't forget to do anything on my end. Add them, make sure I have their disc profile, add to the printers, get their 16 personality results, their love language results. Add all their stuff to the calendar, the dates and events that are coming up, program their code, get a picture. We have a picture of all of us on the wall, like family pictures, add them to the loop, order their name tag, add to Slack, Rivety website command, have them fill out their favorite things worksheet, add their email, help with their email signature, update the roster, send it out to everybody, add to Zillow, add to Facebook, all the different groups. Get a bio in the headshot, add to website, LinkedIn, get some shirts for them to logo, order their business cards, send email intro samples to have them choose, that's for Rivety, send their template to fill out their SOI list to upload to Rivety, and have them start their .loop training and group, add them to Google Drive. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I would say that's
Okay.
a pretty good.
Yeah, we
checklist.
have something very similar to that. It's just,
I mean, that's what I do. The director of sales has her own onboarding system, but this is the stuff I need to remember to do.
And can I ask how you store it? Do you just have it all in a Google Drive? Where do you put all this?
Yeah, I have my own folder for That I'm working on sharing via our site, but this is all in my Director of Operations manual.
Okay.
You guys.
Actually, one thing I was going to mention is that there's a difference between the HR pieces and then all of that other stuff. So like we have an actual HR department, so they keep all of the all of the IRS forms and all of that. That's kind of really very basic. There should probably only be like 5 forms in that, and then all of this other stuff. So I don't actually have that on my checklist because we send someone to that place. But so HR should be kept separate. Nobody should be able to see any HR forms or have access to it at all, except for the HR manager or the DOO and the Rainmaker can, but nobody else should have access to anything else they sign legally. But then all this other stuff, we have the same type thing. We have a folder for them with all of this stuff that's not confidential. So, but that looked comprehensive to me. I thought that looked great.
Oh, thanks, Janet.
So this is actually a big thing that we, for agent onboarding, that we kind of started to focus on last year. And so we have broken ours down into, we have an agent who we have her titled as like our growth coordinator, who handles all the onboarding for everybody. So we have our checklist broken up into, and printed out for them in a binder, the new agents for whenever they meet with operations, when they meet with the Rainmaker, and then when they meet with the growth coordinator.
So Aslan, who keeps track of, like when you have it in a binder and they're meeting with several different people, is it up to them to keep track of the checklist and check it all off? Or is it up to each person they're meeting with? Like, how do you make sure it's getting complete when it's not with one person?
So they have a paper checklist, and in theory, they're bringing their binder to each of their like onboarding meetings with the different people. And so we're kind of going through that checklist together and checking it off as we go. The growth coordinator is the one who is essentially the final person holding everybody accountable, because she is the one that oversees their first 100 days on the team and goes over all of the training with, this is how we do our business with them.
And
Also, one thing that we're trying to do to move ours off of checklists is we started, I don't know if anybody else uses Trainual, but we have really started filling out our Trainual so that all onboarding's on there. So that it's built out for all these different sections of basic, agent, staff, listing, transaction, and so on. And there's videos and the whole bit. And then it might tell you, now you need to go and do this and this and this. So we're trying to get away from the checklists and do it more interactive, but we'll see how that works. So I don't have any stats on how that might work, but.
Would you guys like Jess to share her checklist in the chat?
I would love everyone to share all of the checklists that they've mentioned.
Definitely, I'm a definite too.
So if you use that checklist and we have that, and that's kind of the tool that we go through, what is the process? Like, what does it look like if I'm a new agent or a new operations person on your team? Anyone willing to share what that day looks like with this checklist?
Or maybe in addition to this checklist, like what's their actual, like that's what your actors act like. What does, like, it's 8:01. What happens with your new hire?
Yeah, because I view it very much as all part of the process. So thank you for rephrasing that, Megan.
Well, so for ours, we try to, because we're all still remote too, so we try to sort of mastermind their schedule, at least for that first week. So it may, and it's more about who they're Zooming with or whatever. You know, with an ops person, a lot of their day may be shadowing. They may have big shadowing blocks, and then they'll have maybe a block with me that's walking them through, you know, the software and making sure they can sign on to everything, and, you know, kind of giving them a tour guide through it. You know, if it's with the director of lead gen, it may just be how to fill out the pipeline in Airtable, and, you know, what these notifications mean, you know, and again, I may tour guide them through Slack and things like that. So we sort of slot it out based on people's schedule. Usually they'll have a one-on-one with the rainmaker, regardless of whether they're ops or sales. So that's what we kind of time block based on everybody's schedule, who they're with. And then we go, oh, wait, I got a big chunk midday. Okay, well, that's great. That's when they can be working on their, you know, sphere template or whatever. And so we sort of block their schedule and then put the pieces in as it works for everybody on the team.
So then during those slots, you'd use a checklist and then verify what's everything, did I get it? Right.
Because yeah, it might be one time block with me might be technology tour. One time block with me may just be the, you know, W9 onboarding, you know, that kind of piece too. So it, you know, we'll try to put the blocks with a theme, not just like, I'm going to run through my checklist and like hit everything on Monday.
How about somebody else? Anybody else want to share what that day looks like, how this process works with the checklist? What other questions do you guys have, or what would you like to ask?
I'm sorry, my camera's off because I'm charging my phone. I just have a quick question. Do you have a separate list for the agent checklist as different from the DOO checklist for a new agent? Do you have two lists? Does that make sense? Or do you guys just have one list?
We have two. Christy, our director of sales, has her own onboarding checklist, so I'll email her and try to get it before the call's over.
But do you give the new, I have two lists, but I don't know, does anyone break it down like that? Like one list for the DOO and then one separate list for the new agent?
So we have
what they should be doing?
We have one big list, and it's like, this is what needs to get done for everybody that joins the team and who's responsible for it. And then we have a list, or then we have subsections. If it's a W-2 employee, this is what happens and who's responsible. If it's an agent, this is what happens and this is who's responsible. And that's just like for the team, the existing team and onboarding. Then there's a different list that the new person will get. Like, here's all the things you need to do, you know, and who you would check with on it or whatever. And sometimes it's just check with your supervisor if you don't know, you know, who to talk to about, oh, wait, I don't think I'm on all the right Slack channels or whatever it is. So.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
I don't know about you guys, but I feel like a smooth onboarding process tells anybody new coming onto the team that you have your act together. If the first thing they experience is nobody's paying attention to them on the first day, or you're looking for information, or you're running around with your head cut off, right? What is their first impression of the team and what their experience with the team's going to be?
Oh, exactly. I put a checklist in the chat. So it has like an every person, and then a little section for agent onboarding, and then after you come on board. So it's very basic on some of the 2 areas. So
I will say, I think that is something that's helped us with giving them the schedule for the week with all the time blocks in there. That, because it seems like either when we're onboarding somebody, it's because we're in a disaster because somebody left, or it's chaotic, or they're onboarding the week that half the team's on vacation, or they're, one time I had one that had a start date a month out, and then when she quit her other job, they were like, just leave, and she was ready to start the next day, and it was like, oh my God, like I really need you and I don't want to put this off, but okay, I'm going to stay up till midnight tonight and try to figure out your schedule. But I think that schedule piece, and then showing them these are blocks for you to work on your onboarding tasks. I do feel like that brings some focus for us, even when we do feel like we're scrambling, at least with them being able to look and see, okay, this is what my schedule is. This is who I'm meeting with. This is my end of day reflection time to write down all the questions I have and, the things I need to get answers about and all that.
It was so good, Paula, that you brought that up. That was my thought. I think we get so focused on the checklist, which is important, and we have to get a lot of that stuff accomplished. But I think we paint a good picture of our culture and how we want it to be presented. And then we do the offer. And then what I've seen is a lot of terrible first day experiences, if I'm being honest, right? Like I've had them, I think we've seen them, and we go through and we do have like the first 30, 60, 90, but even that sometimes is presented in a way like, okay, it's your first day and here you go. This is what we're going to be doing, and you're going to be held accountable to it. And I really loved what the book, The Power of Moments, talks about this very early on. And it talks about how John Deere's onboarding process actually goes. And the difference, you can hear it just in the reading of it, the difference between what we see and experience in our teams, and then we wonder why we have a bad start or a bad culture sometimes on the way it gets started. So if I may, like just listen to this on, they actually created their onboarding to create an experience, a moment that from the first day, employee has a great impression about their thing. So as soon as the offer letter was accepted, the next day they would get an email from the person who's going to be conducting their first day in training. So they get an email. In that email is a picture of them. They introduce themselves and they tell them where to park, what the dress codes are, what the norms are, where they can get something to eat if there's any, and where to meet that very first day. So just stop there and think about some of the ways we present the first day, right? And the difference. And then the next thing is, so now the new person comes there. Of course, the person from the picture in the email is there. We sit down and now they already have a notebook. They have a welcome letter. They set up the email, and the very first email is from the CEO video team leader welcoming them to the team and telling them happy that they were there for their first day. And then there's also the operations manual and some other things that they go over. They also put a sign out and an email notifying everyone else that, hey, if you're here, stop by and say hi when you have a minute. And they put a little blurb about the new employees so people can read it in their email, then stop by and introduce themselves on their own time. I mean, it's a great little thing. I'm sure you could probably find it on the internet, just even that little clip if you didn't want to get the book. But my challenge would be for the group is think about your onboarding process even more than the checklist. And what does it look like and what is the experience when someone accepts an offer and then walks into your team?
I love that perspective, Zach, because it's like, how are we setting them up to be culturally appropriate with us back too, right? Because the culture is gonna be what they experience, not what we say that it is. So it's giving this whole cultural thing. And then the next person we onboard, we want them to participate in the onboarding of too. It's like this virtuous flywheel. So that's really cool concept. Like, how do you onboard to culture versus just checklists?
I think it really goes for offboarding too, right? And I know there's some circumstances, like I get it. There's always different circumstances that may go, but in a cordial offboarding, I think we very much a lot of times go just to a straight checklist too, which does nothing for the actual relationship.
And a lot of us are tasked like we're doers. So this is the harder activity. Like, how do we, what are y'all's thoughts? Like, how do we incorporate the human element? How do we make this human person have an experience that we would want them to have on day one?
I know for us, typically on a day one, they come in and they meet who's going to be kind of like training them, and they do all the paperwork and everything like that, and then they kind of do some. I print out. I have a binder, so it has specific documents within that. So they'll start going through that, and whoever their director, manager has drafted a 30, 60, 90 for them. So they know like day one, what's expected, day 3 through 5, and then following that. So there's like all these items on there. But typically on the day one, we kind of do want a soft landing. So it's, like the paperwork, conversation, typically once they're if we're at the office, because right now we are still remote, kind of talking about different policies, having them read the company policy. But then we try and arrange either a lunch or getting a couple other team members to join them for lunch. And we buy that and kind of have them, because we have 2 halves. So we have real estate and rentals. So we want to make sure that they're meeting people from both sides of it and just having that kind of getting them comfortable with talking with people. And then, the second half of the day is really meeting with different people. So we actually just onboarded, we're in the process of onboarding a new agent. I had time scheduled on Friday with her to go over the major systems that we use. And her and I will meet, and we have our own little checklist and everything, but Katie, who's going to be leading her, has scheduled time with different people. But the first day we try to do fairly light, more overview stuff.
I go over the history and culture, or the history of the team values, and that seems to be really helpful. And then also give them an org chart with everyone's headshots in it, which everyone gets super excited about because they don't know who we are or what we do. So that in terms of just them knowing who they go to talk to and have a face really seems to help. And then just having them learn about the history and who we are as a company is also, I feel gives it a more human touch. And I always do it over, I do it over Zoom because I don't live in the same state, but it's always in a real person conversation. And we make it more of a chat than just a video or something they have to read.
Zach, as you're reading that book, one thing you said I thought was really awesome. And that was that everybody from the team or the company came and introduced themselves to the person. And I think back to my onboarding, like I would walk them around the office, right, and introduce them to everybody. Yet that still feels kind of awkward when people are coming to you and saying, hey, I'm so excited you've joined the team. I wanted to come to you and introduce myself. It's a different feeling. It's like more welcoming than being dragged around to be and introduced to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, they actually said, and I mean, we're talking about different versions of this, but they actually had a banner that they posted. So if you can picture like a flagpole saying like new employee here, and then everyone would stop by.
Just brought to mind how changing just one little thing changes the feeling around something.
I hadn't thought about that, Paula, but that's such a powerful perspective, right? And it's like a zero cost, zero effort change to just like redirect people to go see them, but it feels so different from the receiver's perspective. So that's a really neat, like one of those mental things, but really cool.
Yeah, my thought was I really liked sending an email out to the team about the potential hire. Like I'm thinking back in my own career, both in real estate and even in retail. And one, yeah, it's always super awkward because you're dragging someone around and be like, hey, here, meet Zach. But also like, it doesn't have any meaning to it. You're like, oh, great, that's Zach. Right. And then you got to circle around like 20 minutes later and be like, okay, who's Zach? What does he do? Like anything, right? Normally we just give a title and then we give the person's name.
See, but we kind of are, I mean, because part of our hiring process is that culture fit interview.
Yeah.
And so like everybody's gotten their resume, they've been on the team call, then, you know, and it's a lot of the personal stuff is in that conversation, and then we get off and we download about the person. I don't know, this question of this, I think they're going to bolt in a year. Like,
Yeah,
we've already picked them apart so much by their first day. Like, all the current people know who they are. Like, they got it down. It's them trying to figure out all of those people.
Yeah. And that works great, Angie, if that's part of the way your team does that. Not all teams do it that way.
Well, and you also got to think like from the new person's perspective, like we all know who they are, but they met us for like that one interview and are probably, especially if they're new to real estate, are like, I don't know what a TC is. Like, what does that person do? Like, great, it's Zach the TC, but what the hell does that mean? And like just helping them figure out like where in the organization everybody fits from their perspective, I think is also like a really powerful cultural thought. Like we forget sometimes what it's like to be the new person and not know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Janet.
I think you reminded me of something because in my past position, I always, as you know, the management sent out an email to the whole company. Hey, welcome, blah, blah, blah. Even if people knew them, welcome, blah, blah, blah. And a little blurb about them. And we're so glad to have you here and all of that, which makes you feel great when you see it in your inbox because it's like, oh, that's nice. And I always did that when someone was leaving also, unless it was like I'm terminating them today. But I would always do that for someone who left. I'd say, oh, you know, I just want to let everybody know, and here's everything great they've done, and we're so happy for you and all of that. So that reminded me that I used to do that all the time. And I came here and it's like, oh, that didn't even cross my mind to do that. Duh, boop, boop. Silly.
My perspective went to, even when hearing that, and I know part of the career visioning I've done correctly, you're absolutely right. Like we go through and scan all of that. But I love what Megan said, because if you think about it, so we've had one meeting where I have been asked all of the questions and really grilled, and then suddenly I show up the first day and no one talks to me. I know that's not necessarily the case, right? Like that's facetious 30,000 foot view. And That's how I envision it, right? Where the difference would be like, okay, so maybe you don't send out a blurb, but even if everyone stopped by and was like, hey, I'm so happy you're here, welcome the first day, right? Or pops on with a quick text and says, hey,
yeah,
welcome to the team, glad to see you on your first day. I still think is impactful even after that first just one-time meeting, initial meeting.
We do that on chat. So we have a group chat. So it's always welcome, blah, blah, blah. And then everybody sends all of their info during that, that first interaction. So that's always nice. But like, I think what's interesting in all of this, everybody's talking like, is everybody in the office? Because we're remote still. So this whole thing is like so strange being remote. And making it more touchy feeling and making people feel like they're part of it, and everything's been so difficult. So I'm in the least amount of people if other people aren't remote, because we're not in office.
We're still remote, and that's where I think our Slack channels have really helped. And like that's usually that first morning tour I do the Slack tour.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have a puppies channel, and like Lord knows how many amazing pictures and videos of Fenway are in there. And, you know, like, and, you know, and everybody, and so you can figure out, oh, who on the team is into their dogs. And then if the new person has a dog, boy, they've got pictures of their dog up in the first 20 minutes. Like their dog has been introduced to the team. And then like, you know, we have, you know, and then we have all kinds of channels dedicated to, you know, some of them are just fun and silly. And so I think those help people too, that, you know, at least sort of start to get to understand personalities and interests a little bit better. So, because once you add them, they can go back and read the history in the channel or whatever. So.
And that's a great point, Janet. Like, how do we onboard people virtually so that they feel our culture, they feel welcomed, right? Because they don't get any of that personal touch that you get when you're in person.
You could still take them to lunch if you give them some like Grubhub money. My boyfriend's company does that. They give them like gift cards all the time, and then they do like team lunches just like on Zoom.
Emily, like, actually, I love that you chimed in here, because Emily's entire leadership team is all in different cities, all of them, and none of them is the city where the main hub team is. So you do a lot of like Grubhub stuff and things like that. So like, talk to us about that, because that applies for teams who might be in the same city, but you still don't see each other. So how do you do it?
Yeah, so I mean, we have someone pack a bag of like team swag and like, you know, fun stuff for them for their first day, and we make sure that it's like dropped off to their house, you know, however that needs to happen. And yeah, and then we do I think food is really important to me, so Grubhub money and planning to eat together is like always really cool. It's kind of awkward eating together over Zoom, like it just is, but it's fun. And then we'll do like happy hours or things like that. If we have a new person joining them, you know, we do them mostly during the summer, but something like that. And you can even Drizzly, I don't know if they have that where you are, but Drizzly is like Grubhub for alcohol. You can send alcohol to their house if they're a drinker. So yeah, I think we just try and figure out ways to like be connected, even though we're not. So I think we were all thinking about this like at the beginning of the pandemic, because we were like, we have to figure out how to maintain this thing and not let go. And some of that we've adjusted because we've gotten used to the pandemic, but I think we let some of that effort go. I know I have, you know, where we tried so hard to make sure that we had good culture, and now I don't know, we've gotten used to being separate. So I don't know, need some revitalization in that area. Yeah.
So it definitely wouldn't work in Emily's case. So we do have that, and this is kind of different about keeping the culture. So we have our rentals division, and they have something called the big release. So they've been situating returning renters for the last couple of months, and whatever's remaining gets released to the public. So that day when that happens, they kind of take a step back and the floodgates of emails open. And so we try and celebrate that kind of like, we've made it through this part. So we're all relatively close where we live. But normally we go out to really nice lunch and we haven't been able to do that. So I made these like kind of, I had a friend of mine who has a Cricut who loves it. So she made 4 individual coffee mugs that was kind of specific to them. And then I did like K-bomb for Kevin, and I put milk chocolate, those chocolate bombs, hot chocolate bomb, put those in them. And then I got some little macaroons and a little bottle of champagne, some pop rocks for some fun, and some like bath salts for the women. And anyway, so I made these little bags, and then the email goes out at noon. So I drove to each one of their houses. I'm very impressed with my ninja skills, and put them in the front porch of each of their homes. And then right after the email went out, I texted them all and said, oh, you should take a breath and, go out on your front porch. Well, I had to be more specific than that. They did not get my hint. But it was just like, something for them, and like a little nice surprise for them for all the hard work they did. And in the past, I don't know if you guys know what nothing bundt cakes are, but I love them. So when they first got here, I bought a bunch for the entire team and did the same thing. I drove around to everyone's houses during the evening, during the pouring rain, and dropped them off in front of their houses so that they could each like have just a surprise when they open the door. And if they have family members, I got them a bigger one, just as like a surprise and delight type thing. We're not a bunch of high eyes when like it just gets crickets.
I love that idea. I was just thinking about telling our team leaders that I would like to be the ambassador of gift and surprise giving of our team, based on what you just said.
When I'm also starting this year, I'm also given a budget for the year of when I can do that stuff. So that I'm not constantly spending my own money. Not that they didn't say, oh, submit for reimbursement, but sometimes it's like, oh, well, it's a gift from me. So I actually now have like a company card, and I have a budget.
Yeah. I do. I deliver birthday ice cream to people's houses. I really like food, you guys. So I have a birthday calendar for our team, and whenever it's your birthday, I send you ice cream. And you can I use like Amazon Fresh or like Grubhub or whatever. You can send a whole pint of ice cream and some candles, whatever it is, some whipped cream, but I really like food.
How expensive is that?
I try to keep it like under $30 a person with delivery and everything. That's always my goal. Unless it's like a really big birthday, then I splurge. But you can do it for less. It's possible. Like Instacart or whatever.
In the spirit of our love for food in this conversation, what's your favorite, like, what's your ice cream you deliver to yourself, or what's your nothing bundt cake that you get for you? I gotta know.
It always has to have peanut butter or mint. Like those are my two.
Fascinating.
With peanut butter or like a mint chip or something.
Oh, okay.
Not together. Not together. But one of those pathways of ice cream is what I go for.
I love it.
I love it because the energy changes. And I think the onboarding is such a fleeting moment that we allow to go that sets the tone for the culture, and we don't think it's that big of a deal.
I don't know if this was brought up earlier, but one thing that I always struggle with is like my onboarding alongside or timing it with the offices. It's kind of different for every person, but I don't know if you guys talked about this. I was a little bit late, but it always seems to be a struggle. Like they're overwhelmed because they're doing 2 at once, or they're getting all these emails. And so I try and have them do it before, but then sometimes timing doesn't work. And I don't know. I haven't got a flow with that yet. And I don't know if anyone else feels that way.
Yeah, when I was in corporate, and working in startups and we were just hiring dozens and dozens of people, we made a rule. Everybody onboards on Tuesday. And if you don't get them hired in time to start the next Tuesday, because we had a cutoff day, I think like Thursday or whatever, then they had to wait till the following Tuesday. And, you know, the VPs would come in screaming and crying, no, I need this person. Nope, sorry, only on Tuesday. Because Mondays are just hard to try to do that. But then you can try to calendar, okay, their conversation with this person, their conversation with that person. You know, if it's repeated information or whatever, you put them in the same one. But yeah, don't cut off the waterfall, you know, and if you can, with smaller organizations, if you can push it to like the same week of the month and do everybody onboarding. And so it's like, okay, this week, my one thing is onboarding. And like, okay, I've been able to kind of look at the calendar and, but.
Yeah, I always do Tuesdays. Mondays are the worst. My boss always wants them to start on Mondays, and I'm like, I refuse. They can come to the team meeting, but they cannot start until Tuesday morning. But I guess I feel like they're kind of onboarding with two companies at once in a lot of cases. If you're an agent who's coming into the brokerage and onto the team. And so it just can get kind of confusing and overwhelming. I don't know if anyone else has found this or.
On some of that, we just put it in their calendar for the first week of like, oh, you need to go to your tech onboarding with this person. You need to go to this class, you know, or now our market center's hardly even doing the classes on Zoom anymore. They're like, here's the video library of all the times we did the classes, go watch it. So, you know, and we put all those links in with their like 1 week calendar.
Okay, so you like work with the office to set a schedule for them?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of times the market center's calendar is what the market center's calendar is, but you kind of will slot those spots in, you know, and so that may be too, like if they do their walkthroughs on Monday afternoons or whatever, it may be that they actually technically go to that walkthrough Monday afternoon and start with the team on Tuesday or whatever.
Okay.
But again, they've met all of us because they've done the, you know, the team interviews and everything. And usually they've met with at least 3 or 4 people on the team before they get to that team interview. So they have a handful of people they know.
Emily, is your market center remote too? Are they coming into the market center?
No, they do have to go in. We just recently had an issue too, because the guy had COVID. So he was like trying to do everything remote, but he couldn't. Like they were like, no, you have to come in. So then we had to like push his start date with us because he like officially wasn't signed up with the office, and because they required him to like go into the office. So it's a mixture. They'll do some things remote, but they also require you to go in.
Only speaking from my perspective in each situation, you'll have to just look at it. I had some challenges and heard it wasn't as efficient as what it could be. So I actually requested I attended those meetings with them. And it worked. I was the extra accountability piece because now I'm there, right? And I can answer some questions and kind of just make sure we have a good rapport. So again, I was like, okay, I'll meet you there. And I just made sure I was a part of it. I was lucky enough where I was able to do that. I had my team in place, but that's what I did. And I did that for like, I don't know, a couple of months. And then it seemed like they got their act together because they knew I would just start coming again. So it seemed like it worked a lot better. And I really didn't have to put much effort in other than just go and make sure I was there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you.
So I have a question for everybody because we haven't talked about offboarding much. What are your guys' policies when you offboard someone suddenly, right? It's not I gave my notice, I'm leaving in 2 weeks, like they're offboarded suddenly. So,
For me, when they're offboarded suddenly, like I go into full nuclear shutdown, like everything's locked out. Like, yeah, they can't, their Google Drive's turned off, their email immediately starts forwarding to me. They're, you know, like we send an email to the market center, like copy all the team leaders. This person's no longer affiliated with our team. They're out of Slack. They're, you know, yeah.
So Angie, do you have a checklist for that too then? Like these are the 10 things I need to do immediately.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's always that one random thing, or, you know, something will get toggled. As many times I go into the Google Drive and set the permissions that you can't share outside the organization for something. There are things like I share with other ops directors. And so then I go in and I find out, oh, somebody has shared that with their personal email or whatever. And so, you know, there's always those things I find out later because, you know, we have literally hundreds and hundreds of docs. It's hard to find that it got shared. You know, this one doc is shared with that person's personal email, but using the shared drives, like upgrading your Google account to that shared drive thing helps a lot with that.
What were you going to say, Kristen?
I was going to say the same thing. We, unfortunately, the past time that we had to quote unquote offboard someone, it was the same way. It was just nuclear shutdown, and we don't have a checklist. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about the offboarding too, is because we didn't have one, and we would hope that if this were to ever happen again, it wouldn't be nuclear shutdown and it would be more of a system. But we do the same thing. Like, we go into our drive, make sure it wasn't shared with anyone, and start forwarding their emails and everything.
We have so our team is kind of, I know it functions a little weird. So like, you know, like for DocuSign, we basically have one DocuSign account that all the agents use. And so obviously I don't want them to have everyone to have all passwords. So we do use LastPass. So if it is one of those things, I can shut down their access to all of it and disconnect them from it to make sure that they no longer have access. And then, you know, I can go switch out the email and everything. But I really like LastPass just because I have control over that, and they can get logged into things and don't ever need to see the password.
I agree. It's the best. It's a game changer.
Can you use that for multiple websites, like for like referral websites and stuff that we have?
You don't even want to see mine. Mine's actually for a organizational person, like because I get issued a LastPass vault of my own. And so any shared folder is team stuff. But because it's an extension on my computer, if I have like my personal Gmail, I can add it to the vault, my, you know, bank login. So I have a bunch of sites that are personal sites for me that can be added there. So if you have like, you know, referral folder and all the sites that are associated with that, you could save them all in there, and you could share it with other team members if you wanted to.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank
You can link up, just FYI, you can link up a personal LastPass and a like business one. So I have my personal one connected to my business one. So if I did ever leave the company, I wouldn't have to start over. Just FYI. Yeah. So we have an exit checklist. We have one that's for a termination and one that's for a voluntary exit. And then we have it broken down into what needs to happen before, during, and after they're being told they're being terminated. Because a couple of things need to happen before that conversation, and then a bunch of things need to happen actually during that conversation, like locking them out of their email and everything. And then there's all those little last pieces that happen after. So that's how I have mine kind of structured. And then also we do a really fairly awkward, but we do it, exit interview. I don't know if you guys do this, but we talk to them a few days after and ask them for some reflections, especially if it's a voluntary leave, but also if it is a termination.
Emily, who does those exit interviews? Is it their direct supervisor, or is it somebody else? Is it like the Rainmaker? It's you.
It's just me. And yeah, and I tell them, you know, like, we're using this to grow and to learn. We always want to learn from every experience. And so, like, you know, your honesty is appreciated, but, you know, Yeah, I tell them that, you know, I may tell people these things because we want to be learners. But I think that I get more accurate responses than if it was their maybe direct supervisor, because they maybe would be embarrassed to be open about it. So they can more easily kind of throw someone under the bus to me than they can to that person. But then also, you know, of course I take into consideration, you know, that they may be frustrated or whatever, you know, but there's usually in every single one of those exit interviews, there's at least something that we can take from it. There's like a kernel that is a really helpful reflection for us as a company. So, but I try to only make it one. I left one company and they made me do like 3 exit interviews with 3 different people. And I was just like, just let me leave. Like, please, I just want to go. Like, I don't hate you guys. I just need to move on with my life. So, yeah.
Emily, whenever y'all have like an agent, do you have to like sort out leads and things, or like people that are under contract or your pipeline? Like, how does that go? Because we've done that in the last few times. It hasn't gone the best. So looking for some pointers if anybody has that for agent type.
So, I mean, it's like in their contract, what we do at different points of the process, like if it's pending, what happens, if they're assigned client, what happens. So they have mentors. So if it's a signed client that's like not from their sphere or something like that, then it'll go to their mentor unless the client, of course, decides that they still want to work with that person, because consumer choice is consumer choice. So they have a discussion with them and then we leave it up to the client to make that decision. But yeah, and then pending ones, we just take over entirely. And then for leads, like nurtures and stuff, we pass some of those off to their mentor, and then other ones will disperse or put into like a lead pool. So that is also part of the exit interview, is where I explain to them like what's going to happen throughout that process. So.
One of the things that I did too, Emily, we had a similar process, right? I would do an exit agreement, which was an addendum to their contract that then put it all in writing, because I found that even though I was verbally having the conversations, they still weren't hearing what was being said, and none of them were reading their agreements to begin with. So we were having all this conflict. And by doing those exit agreements, it literally solved all the problems. Like once we started doing that, we never had any conflict arise afterwards, because it made it really clear to everybody.
So we used to have an exit agreement, and then we talked to a lawyer and she just had us put it into our like contract, like all of our termination language, because she said basically, first of all, we had someone tell us like, yeah, I'm not signing that. Like, you can't make me sign that. I'm leaving. And we were like, oh wait, actually that's very true. And then also she said it's not really actionable, like legally.
It was part of our contract. What the exit agreement said was, we are allowing you to continue to work with Joe Smith, Sally Mae, right? So it spelled out the people that they were working with. So it was really clear. So it just gave those extra details.
Yeah.
But it didn't add language that wasn't already in it just specified exactly who was who.
Yeah, we had like an exit, like a term or an exit agreement that was actually like a whole thing that they signed. And then we realized like, wait, that doesn't work. So all of the termination language has now been put into their original, like their initial contract.
Yeah.
Which makes the initial contract kind of depressing, but it's what it is.
Do they read it anyway, Emily?
Yeah, we actually read it with them, the contract.
Oh.
We, before they join, like that's part of our onboarding process, is we literally go line by line through their contract with them, like make it very, very clear. So
we do the same thing, Emily, and we've realized as well, as soon as they get their notice is the best time to hit that and like the nail on the head of, just so you know, here's what happens next. And then you can schedule that exit interview. But we've had an agent that we're wrapped up in the middle of a legal battle with that immediately we addressed, here's what happens with the database. I know we talked about this in your onboarding, and it has been a fight ever since. Like, if you can narrow that gap down when you have that exit interview, it saves you a lot of pain later.
All of you guys who haven't experienced it can learn from those who have.
And welcome, Monica. So speaking of community, Monica is one of our great new DOO coaches. So she'll be jumping in and out. So reach out to her. She's a great resource and she's on here. So I'm glad you're able to make the call.
Thanks, Zach. I'll apologize for the appearance. I am at home with COVID, but I saw Megan's invite and I wanted to hop in while I could.
We were just talking about how we grade people on their appearance. So it's okay. You can make up for it later.
And we are very judgmental, so just throwing that out there.
I'm so excited for that. Thank you, Megan.
Okay, guys, what is our, Zach, what's our topic next week? I'm drawing a total blank.
I have it up. So next week, what we're looking at is Ask an Operations Coach. So that'll be open.
That's
we'll
right.
be into family reunion prep is where the topic will be at and going around there. So please join us. That'll be a wider audience. So remember, Ask an Ops will be great because there'll be a lot of people even outside of our community that'll join in with a different perspective. Then we'll be coming back to bring your favorite book with a short sentence of why you like that book so we can all add to our growth plans. So exciting 2 weeks coming up.
Yeah, love that. I can't wait for that one. I'm pumped about that one. All right, guys, have a great week. We'll see you. We'll see some of you live and in person on Tuesday. The rest of you we'll see for Let's Chat.
Thank you.